Hi everyone, my name is Julie O'Donoghue and I recently joined the Office of the Vice President for Research and Innovation to lead on mapping UCC research onto the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The purpose of this video is to provide some information to researchers who were unable to attend the recent SDGs workshops that were rolled out in schools and centres. We are inviting all researchers who were unable to attend those sessions to submit their own self-assessment of their research contributions to the SDGs, and this will contribute to the overall mapping of UCC research onto the SDGs. On this slide, I first wanted to show you who's working on this project with me. I'm working closely with an action group of staff members coordinated by Dr. Paul Bulger of the Environmental Research Institute, which includes representatives from across the 4 colleges, key research centres and UCC Green Campus. And they have carried out a substantial amount of work in this area since the group convened in May 2021. There's 3 main phases of the project outlined here. In yellow, it shows that we're going to systematically review publications that contribute to the SDG targets using the SciVal research database to search SDGs keywords. This will provide trackable and sound data that can be reviewed annually. This is a tried and tested approach that is used by Times Higher Education as part of their impact rankings, which evaluate the performance of universities through the lens of the SDGs. It has been adopted by a number of our peer institutions, including the University of Manchester, which came first in the Impact Rankings 2021, and NUI Galway, which undertook a similar quantitative mapping using this method in 2020. In Navy, then, we outline our focus on embedding the SDGs in schools and centres through the rollout of the workshops. And these workshops were rolled out in June and July of 2022. A bespoke workshop was developed to raise awareness amongst the research community about the SDGs, and then also to involve researchers directly in mapping their own research to the goals and targets. We see there being a number of benefits to this. First of all, it allows researchers to draw attention to research outputs that aren't in the form of publications, and we're able to capture all of the amazing work beyond publications that contributes to the goals. And we also see this as really essential to ensure long-term engagement with the SDGs amongst the research community going forward. The plans for this were presented to UMT at the end of March, and then the Vice President for Research and Innovation issued an email to all heads of schools and centres seeking nominations for champions to help with the workshop rollout. In red then, the final key component of this project is to demonstrate our impact on a dedicated website and in a report, creating a new online destination to showcase all of the contributions we make through our research to the SDGs.
So why are we mapping our research to the SDGs? I've divided this into benefits to UCC as an institution and also benefits to researchers. So for UCC, this project will help us understand how UCC research contributes to the goals. An exercise like this hasn't been undertaken before, and this will really provide a snapshot at this moment in time of all the different contributions our research are making to the goals. The project then also feeds into ambitions for global rankings. So this is really important for the university to be able to attract talent and also then to maintain its global reputation. And these ambitions are set out under Action 2.4 of UCC 2022, Delivering a Connected University. The project then also helps, for us in UCC to be seen as the Irish research leaders in sustainability. So clearly there's already a substantial amount of research being undertaken that contributes to sustainable development and the SDGs, and it's just a matter of collating all that and showing really how we're leading in this regard. Benefits then to researchers. So the SDGs framework is a common language that's globally understood, and it's an effective way to demonstrate real-world impact. This project is also looking beyond publications. So when we undertook benchmarking and a literature review at the beginning of this project, we could see that many other institutions either solely did quantitative mapping of their publications or they combined that with qualitative case studies. We're doing both of those methods, but we're also employing this rather unique method of these SDGs workshops to ensure that researchers have the opportunity to shine a light on their research outputs that aren't necessarily in the form of publications. So this will give researchers the opportunity to map performances, compositions, book chapters, conference appearances, contributions to national policy in this workshop format. UCC is also looking at replacing the IRIS research information system with a different system going forward, and this new system will have the ability to filter your researchers according to the SDGs they're working on. So you'll be able to identify on your own profile that these are your SDGs that you're contributing to. An example of this system is the PURE system that's used in Queen's University, but there's other systems also that have this facility embedded within it. And finally then, the final benefit to researchers and why we're doing this is to really showcase all of the amazing work that's taking place. So we already know a lot of the sustainability research that's being undertaken, but it's really to shine a light on maybe some of those areas that haven't been focused on much up to now, and giving research the opportunity to say, I am doing amazing work that is contributing to these global goals and targets.
So now let's take a deeper look at what the SDGs are. Before we get to the SDGs, I just want to talk about this definition for sustainable development and also the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, which were the predecessor to the SDGs. So this is the common definition of sustainable development that's used. In 1987, the World Commission on Environment and Development, also known as the Brundtland Commission, laid the foundations for the Millennium Development Goals for 2000 to 2015. The Millennium Development Goals were the predecessor to the SDGs and drove global action to address the basic needs of the world's poorest countries from the year 2000 until the approval of the SDGs in 2015. All 191 UN member states at the time committed to help achieve the goals by 2015, and the 8 Millennium Development Goals were measured by 21 targets. Some examples of the 8 goals are eradicating extreme poverty and hunger, which was MDG 1, MDG 4, which looks at reducing child mortality, MDG 6, which combats HIV and AIDS, malaria and other diseases. The UN SDGs then built on the MDGs in 2015 with the objective of achieving them by 2030. And the SDGs differ from the MDGs in several significant ways that make them more influential and consequential. The SDGs cover a much broader range of challenges, most of which are relevant to all countries or vulnerable populations in those countries. And the SDGs really emphasize the interlinkages between the social, economic and environmental dimensions of sustainable development, as well as between the goals themselves. And therefore, it's important to address the goals in the context of one another and not separately. So these are the Sustainable Development Goals here, and most of you are probably familiar with these. They've been described as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all people and the world by 2030. And the idea behind the goals is that no one will be left behind. The set of 17 goals were agreed on by 193 member states of the United Nations in September 2015. And the goals themselves, along with the targets, were detailed in the Sustainable Development Agenda, which was called Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The 17 goals are backed up by a set of 169 detailed targets and separate indicators then to help track progress to their achievement. The goals were negotiated over a 2-year period at the UN, with Ireland playing a really important role there, co-facilitating the negotiations alongside Kenya. And David Donoghue was our UN ambassador at the time, who was very involved in that process. I think a good way of looking at the SDGs is that they are a form of social contract. They're universal and apply to every nation. So the UN reports on progress each year, the EU tracks progress annually, Ireland reports at government level, and then every sector of society, including organisations, NGOs, private citizens, everyone has a role to play in their achievement. And likewise then, university research also plays a really important role, and that will be talked about later in the presentation. The goals are integrated and interdependent, and one goal cannot be achieved without the others. So an example of this that I've come across that I find very interesting is if coal is used, for example, in Asian nations to improve energy access, which comes under the affordable energy part of SDG 7. So it's kind of ignoring, I suppose, the clean energy part. This addresses the goal for affordable energy, but this would negatively impact on climate change and acidify the oceans, which undermines goals 13 and 14, as well as potentially impacting on health, which is SDG 3, which would in turn impact on children's ability to attend school, which is SDG 4, or people attending work, which is SDG 8.
So we've looked at the 17 goals, but it's essential to understand that each goal has a number of targets and indicators associated with it. Take this example of SDG 1, no poverty. There are 7 targets for SDG 1, and the targets provide clear guidelines on each goal's impact and context. One of the targets is listed here, target 1.2, to reduce the proportion of people living in poverty. Under those targets then, there are 13 indicators. The indicators behind each goal were formulated in 2017 to support the measurement of progress towards the goals, and these indicators are reviewed regularly. Each goal out of the 17 goals has a different number of targets and indicators associated with it, and we'll be looking at these later in the mapping exercise. The goals are for everyone and are relevant to all areas of research. Often people mistakenly focus on environment alone when thinking about sustainability or the SDGs. However, environment is only one of the areas. The goals are often described as being centered around people, planet, prosperity, peace and partnership, the 5 Ps of sustainable development identified in the 2030 UN Agenda. The image on the right shows how the SDGs relate to the 5 Ps of sustainable development. You can see that 5 goals, goals 11 to 15, have been identified as relating to planet, with 1 to 6 relating mostly to people, 7 to 10 relating to prosperity, 16 to peace, and 17 to partnership. This slide comes from the Europe Sustainable Development Report 2021, which is an independent quantitative report on the progress of the European Union and its member states towards the Sustainable Development Goals. This report is prepared by teams of independent experts at the Sustainable Development Solutions Network and the Institute for European Environmental Policy. You can see on this slide that Ireland is coming 16 out of 34 countries. The reason why it's marked out of 34 rather than the 27 member states is that the report includes evaluation of EU partner countries, for example Iceland, Norway and the UK. None of the icons are flagged as green yet, so as a country we have not achieved any of the SDGs. However, SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and SDG 10, reduced inequalities, are all on track or maintaining SDG achievement. For SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 17, partnerships for the goals, major challenges remain. Again, the EU has not achieved any of the SDGs thus far. However, it's on track to achieve SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and 11, sustainable cities and communities. Major challenges remain in 2 with regards to zero hunger, 13 on climate action, 14 life underwater, and 15 life on land. So now, very important, we're going to talk about the benefits of the SDGs to the research community and how your engagement with the SDGs will be of benefit to you into the future. Before we look at the benefits, it's important to look at the contributions of university research to the SDGs. This diagram is from the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and it shows that universities have a role to play in contributing to the SDGs through their research, their education, their operations and governance, and external leadership. And we're going to focus solely on research, which is circled here. So through their extensive research work, which provides the knowledge, solutions and innovations to support achieving the SDGs, researchers in universities have a key role to play in achieving the goals. They also adopt interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approaches that bring together different disciplines and knowledge to resolve complex social, environmental and economic challenges. University researchers also actively support national and local implementation of the SDGs, using the SDGs to collaborate with industry, government, communities, private sector and NGOs around specific SDGs challenges. And by supporting capacity building for developing countries to undertake and use research on the SDGs, university research is also contributing to the goals in this way. Finally, I think university research really embodies what SDG 17 Partnerships for the Goals means, in that university researchers cooperate around the globe and build research networks to sustain innovation worldwide. Every day, researchers in UCC are collaborating with European and global partners regularly around issues of sustainable development. Now, turning to the benefits for researchers. Every researcher here understands the importance of research impact, and shown here on the slide are two definitions of research impact, one from Science Foundation Ireland and a more detailed definition from the Research Excellence Framework in the UK. It is helpful to look at the SDGs and their associated targets as an effective framework for determining real-world research impact. The SDGs are a helpful map as to the issues that must be prioritised on a global scale to ensure a sustainable world for all. The SDGs are beneficial in all phases of research, whether it's getting funding, helping to identify potential collaborators, or disseminating your research and communicating the impact of your research to people in different audiences, whether they're internal or external. This graph shows that the SDGs are at the heart of impact and provide the common global language for highlighting the impact of your research. The 9 areas around the SDGs are based on the European Science Foundation's classification of research impact, showing how many different types of impact exist. The 3 yellow segments surrounding that all require discussion of impact and hence benefit from alignment with the SDGs. This includes funding, collaboration and dissemination of research. We're going to focus on 2 benefits of the SDGs in terms of research impact. First, in terms of funding proposals, and then as a common language to collaborate and communicate your impact. Turning first to funding, a knowledge of the contribution your research makes to the SDGs is an advantage when applying for funding. On this slide is a snapshot of the research funding that is available to the research community here in UCC. This list is not exhaustive but covers the main funding bodies. Most funding agencies now consider impact an essential part of their funding programs, requiring an impact statement as part of the application. Some funding proposals explicitly call out the SDGs and require discussion of research impact in terms of the SDGs. In other proposals where the SDGs aren't explicitly referred to, they can be brought in and discussed under the area of the funding proposal where you are asked to describe your impact. 3 examples of funding applications and funding calls are described here on this slide. They mightn't necessarily be of specific relevance to your research area, but these are just shown for example purposes. And it also shows really that these are quite big funding bodies that are looking for this information. So in terms of the funding bodies relevant to your own particular area, you might want to discuss this with the research manager in your college or your centre. Example 1 then, this is an example of an EPA topic from the 2021 call, which makes reference to the SDGs, particularly target 12.3. The proposed research here is expected to contribute to helping Ireland fulfil its commitment to achieving the SDGs. And being able to discuss the SDGs in your research proposal here would be very advantageous. Second then is Science Foundation Ireland, and SFI describes impact in 8 different categories. These impact categories can be linked to the SDGs when preparing impact statements for proposals. For example, the SFI calls out economic and professional services as 2 different areas of impact, and these can come under SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. So it's about making that link with the SDGs and being able to bring that in then in terms of the impact categories that the SFI are looking for. Finally then is an example from Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe 2021 to 2027. There's 3 pillars under Horizon Europe, the second of which is global challenges and industrial competitiveness. And the general objective of Horizon Europe includes mention of contributing to tackling global challenges, including the SDGs. Under Pillar 2, there are 6 clusters with a budget of over 53 billion. And there are 3 evaluation criteria for funding proposals, one of which is impact under Pillar 2. So whichever cluster your research comes under, whether it's relating to health or relating to Cluster 6, food, bioeconomy, agriculture and environment, they are looking, as part of the evaluation of your application, they're looking for this description of your impact, which includes the wider long-term effects on society, including the environment, the economy, and science. So the ability to discuss the contribution of your research to the SDGs would be of great benefit here. The SDGs are also a helpful tool to help communicate local impact in a global language. So while there are multiple impact frameworks and standards, the SDGs framework is universally known of, making it more accessible worldwide and easier to compare results across the globe. This is particularly helpful in cases where research may be more difficult to explain in simple terms. By mapping the research to the SDGs and using the SDGs icons when disseminating research, it has the ability to gain more reach. The first example here is the Pure Researcher portal that is implemented in Queen's University Belfast, and this is their version of Iris. So they use Pure in Belfast instead of what we use here in Cork, which is the Iris system. And UCC is currently considering introducing a similar system to this, if not the same system, to enable researchers to identify their contributions to the SDGs on a central research information system like this. Queen's has clearly prioritised the SDGs in terms of profiling the achievements of their researchers. And this database allows you to search for researchers according to which of the 17 goals they contribute their research on. The ability to search for the research in a particular SDG of interest and reach out them to seek collaborations is very helpful, both internally and externally. So internally, researchers will be able to see what other researchers within the university are working on similar interests, and then externally they'll be able to make connections with other universities, whether that's north-south connections or connections across the globe. In today's competitive environment, institutions must increasingly demonstrate the value and impact of their research outputs. Increasingly, governments, funders and the community want to know how people will be helped by the investment into research. And this ties in with the area of engaged research, which describes the process of researchers engaging with societal partners to create new knowledge that advances societal challenges, which are issues of public interest or concern, including the SDGs. This is an area that is being progressed by my colleague John Barimo, the Engaged Research Officer for the University, who will be developing and implementing an engaged research strategy for the University in the coming years. These are 3 examples here on this slide of how you can use the SDGs to communicate research impact. Example 1 is an article from The Lancet from March 2022, which looks at the issue of depression. And here the authors, in the middle of their article, broke down the different goals that depression has a link to, and how by taking action on depression you can then have a positive impact on a number of these goals. So 10 out of the 17 goals they identified a link with. And I suppose this is to demonstrate really that this is a really growing area. The fact that this article was only published 2 months ago, and it's, you know, a detailed article in The Lancet that is on one page broken down. This is how it contributes to the goals. So this is, you know, top of mind for many researchers now in terms of communicating their research. Second then is an example from Ormish University in Australia, and this is an example of a qualitative case study, and here they've shown the link between their research and 4 particular SDGs targets. So we are looking to do this ourselves here in UCC, and the other video that I will be sharing will talk through the case study template that we've developed, where we've tried to keep it as short and as kind of clear as possible. It's 250 to 300 words that we're looking for, that will be featured then on our website and in our new report. So please check out the other video to see more on that. And finally then, just to highlight that in the UCC Research Awards this year, there's a new category, which is the President's Award for Research Impacting the SDGs. And as part of that, a case study on the SDGs had to be submitted, and it's just really to show that this is going to be a focus in the research awards going forward in the university. And also, you know, if you took the time perhaps after this session to develop your case study, you'd be prepared then to apply for these awards perhaps next year and so on. So two separate videos will be available to talk you through the mapping form and the case study template. The mapping form looks at the kind of more quantitative mapping, so it's asking you to map your research, your current research and future planned research to the SDGs at goal level and also then at target level. So there's a separate video talking you through that, and then also then there's a third video looking at the case study template. And the collation of qualitative case studies is a very important part of the overall mapping of our research, and that talks you through the case study template and what we're looking for there. So in the workshop, researchers would have had 15 minutes to complete the quantitative mapping form, which is the second video, and we're recommending then that researchers set aside 30 to 40 minutes to complete a qualitative case study if they wish to do so. So it's voluntary, and with the qualitative examples, they will be spotlighted on our website and report. So if it's something you'd like to do to shine a light on the contribution of your research to the goals, the option is available for you there to do so. So I just want to talk through two examples of what we're talking about when we're asking you to map your contribution to the goals and targets. And this first example here is a research project that's being undertaken by IPIC along with Infant and CUH. And it's a device for respiratory health care of newborn babies. And it's a non-invasive device that they've created there. So this clearly maps to target 3.2, which is there to end all preventable deaths under 5 years of age. So that kind of mapping link there is clear that this research contributes to achieving that target. You can also say then that it contributes to target 3.4, reducing mortality from non-communicable diseases. So this is looking at reducing mortality from non-communicable diseases, including cancer. And from babies being treated at this earlier stage, and also having to undergo less invasive methods to receive treatment, you can also say that it has a contribution then to target 3.4 as well.
The second example then is the Care Visions project in ISS 21, which sets out to reflect on care experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. You can say that this project contributes to target 5.4, valuing unpaid care and promoting shared domestic responsibilities. You can also say that this research contributes to target 10.2, promoting universal social, economic and political inclusion of all citizens. Target 10.7 in relation to responsible and well-managed migration policies. And finally, target 16.b, which looks to strengthen national institutions to prevent violence and crime, particularly in relation to discrimination and harassment.
So as I mentioned, there's a separate video that shows you the actual self-assessment form on Microsoft Forms and what we're looking for you to actually do on the form. So if you want to take a look at that video to see the form itself and for any kind of guidance on completing the form. Just to mention again that in the workshops, researchers had 15 minutes to complete the form. We're asking researchers to consider their current research or future planned research for this exercise. You'll be asked 3 general questions about the SDGs, then asked to identify the main 3 SDGs that your research contributes to, followed by a maximum of 6 targets under those 3 goals. So we're only asking you to look at the targets under the 3 goals that you've chosen. So if you'd like to look at that separate video there for more information on that. So then just looking at case studies, qualitative case studies are essential really to this project. We want to hear kind of richer description of the impact that your research is having on the SDGs. So we've created a separate case study template for these examples to be submitted. There's a separate video describing to you what's involved in that case study template and how it should be completed. So if you want to take a look at that video for more information, but I'm just going to show you here a couple of examples of what we're looking at. So these are examples here from other institutions. On the left is Ormond University in Australia. So you can see that it's kind of a short enough description of the research, and then underneath they've mapped it to the goals 10 and 11, but they've also then mapped it down to the targets, so 10.2, 11.3 and 11.7, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So by collating all these case studies, what we want to end up with is nice short paragraphs describing the research and then the targets that the research contributes to. The second example then is from the University of Limerick. Again, they have kind of a summary of the impact. It's quite short, and they map to the high level goals only. So they don't actually go down into target level. They just map it to these 4 goals, and we're asking our researchers to map to the targets. So what are we looking for? As I mentioned, there's a separate video that talks through the actual template itself. So if you want to take a look at that for more detail, we're asking people to complete and submit the case studies within the next 2 weeks after the case study template is shared with you. So we're kind of allocating a 2-week period. We recommend that people set aside 30 to 40 minutes after they complete the mapping exercise, when the information is nice and fresh in your mind, and it's just a matter of kind of elaborating to a kind of a small degree on what you've already done in the quantitative mapping. So both of the exercises really fit in together, and if you could maybe complete both within kind of a near enough time to each other, it would probably make it easier. Thank you for your time and for engaging with this process and contributing your mapping data. If you have any other questions at all, please do email me at juliodonahue@ucc.ie.